This is a bit of an impromptu video because I've been working in my kitchen today, but I wanted to take some time to talk to you about all of the comments and emails and even text messages that I've been receiving about all the worries and concerns that you have about everything that's going on in the world. And I wanted to share with you, and I share this with you humbly, but I wanted to share with you the 3 things that I do that really helps me feel at peace and secure and tamps down my worries and concerns. Hi, sweet friends. If you're new here, I'm Mary from Mary's Nest and author of the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, and I'd like to welcome you to my kitchen. Well, today I've been doing a lot of different things in my kitchen. One of the things I'm getting ready to do right now is make some croutons with some different breads that I pulled out of my refrigerator that I really want to make good use of. But I've been thinking about this as I have been receiving emails and comments about everything that you've been sharing with me that's going on in your life and the worries and the concerns that you have. And the reason that I wound up actually making this video was because while I've been working in my kitchen, I was watching a video by Carolyn over at Homesteading Family. And she was sharing that a lot of people may have, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a lot of people may have went and bought country property and houses in the country and so on and so forth during 2020, and now are feeling very overwhelmed. And some are even selling their properties and leaving that lifestyle. And I can certainly understand that. I can't imagine being a homesteader. I just live on a ½ acre in a relatively, what used to be a small town, I should say, relatively small town, used to be a small town, but with the popularity of Austin and suburban sprawl, our town has grown from about 3,000 people to about 15,000 and growing people. But I live on about a ½ acre, and that's it, and that's about all my husband and I can manage. But in Carolyn's video, she talked about something that I thought was very wise advice, and it was about pulling back if you feel overwhelmed. And I think this can apply to all of us, whether you're on a big homestead, a small homestead, whether you live in the suburbs like me, whether you live in the city. If you're feeling very overwhelmed with everything that you're trying to do, that's understandable, and it's okay to pull back. And a lot of this can be complicated by the fact of everything that's going on in the world, and you can find yourself feeling very nervous. Food is very expensive. We have major conflicts going on around the world, and it's the day-to-day things here for those of us who live in the United States that can be very stressful leading up to our elections in November, major elections. And I tend to be a big picture person, but my husband helps me stay grounded and reminds me that the most important thing is to just control what's in our control. And certainly we can educate ourselves about what's going on and stay on top of news stories. And I also think it's okay every once in a while to take a break from the news. But the bottom line is there are 3 things as a homemaker that I like to do that help me feel at peace, that no matter what is going on in the world, I can feel a certain level of peace and not be worried. Now, separate from those 3 things, on the spirit, these are very practical tips that I'm going to share with you, but separate from the practical, one thing I will share with you is that I really believe in the power of prayer, and prayer comforts me tremendously, and that may be the case for you as well. And something that I really appreciate in particular is the saying from Padre Pio, pray, hope, and don't worry. I even have the bumper sticker on our car. So in the big picture of things, I do find prayer incredibly helpful. But let's talk about the 3 practical tips that I like to do in my home to help me tamp down worries and concerns about whatever may be going on outside my home, in my country, in the world, and beyond. Tip number 1 is that I firmly believe in making sure that I have sufficient food and water on hand. And that's for no matter what happens. If I can't leave my home, I know I have food and water. If I lose power, I know I have food and water that can be prepared without power. If I don't have water, I know I have water. And so this is something that brings me so much peace of mind. And I think it's something that brings so many of us peace of mind, and that's why we spend a lot of time talking about the pantry. And if you can, if this is something new to you, I think in 2020 a lot of us started stocking our pantries. But then maybe we kind of fell into a lull of thinking, well, 2020 is over, 2021 is over, things are kind of falling back to normal and whatnot. But then you can find yourself back into a little bit of a rut where, we hear the expression paycheck to paycheck. I think more of like canned food to canned food. We never want to live where we have no more than a week's worth of food in our pantry. And even though, yes, I understand completely how expensive groceries are, I was shocked the other day. I went to the grocery store. I didn't even buy any meat, and my bill was $100. It leaves me speechless in a way at how expensive food is, and just basic necessities, and that it's so easy to have a grocery bill of $100. So I am very sympathetic when it comes to talking about and listening to others about stocking our pantries. And I think the best thing that we can all do is when we're doing our grocery shopping, just pick up an extra something of whatever we eat. Whether it's a canned good, whether it's a dry food, whether it's whole grains, oatmeal, whatever different types of crackers that you may like. And, just remember that first in, first out. Yes, we're stocking our pantries. Yes, we're stocking our prepper pantries and so on and so forth. But we're also remembering to rotate food and so that things don't go stale. But I think the most important thing is that if you can get to a point where you have at least 2 weeks of backup food in your backup pantry, that part of our prepper pantry that we call our backup pantry, that is where we can, in essence, go shopping and restock foods in our working pantry, it can give us a real sense of security. And when we feel secure, we can feel at peace. And so do it little by little. I've often said maybe an extra $5 in your grocery budget. You don't need to do any of this overnight. But once you have 2 weeks of food, and I'm talking 2 weeks of backup food, so you may have about a week's worth of food in your working pantry, in your fridge, in your freezer, and then you've got 2 weeks of additional food if anything goes awry and you're not able to get to the grocery store. Now, eventually, if you can work to the point where you have more than 2 weeks of food, all the better. And generally, a nice level to meet can be about 2 months worth of food. Most of us can do quite well if we have up to 2 months of backup food. Now, if you want to go 6 months, if you want to go a year, many of us who have been at this for a long time have quite a system in place. And I've shared lots of handouts with you and lots of videos with you on how to do that, which I won't go over today. But these are all things, I'll definitely put them in the description underneath this video. But the big thing is just if you're feeling very worried and very concerned right now about everything that's going on in the world, just having 2 weeks of food can start to make you feel better, along with water. Whether you buy galloned water, little bottles of water, whatever the case may be, whether you jar up water in your canning jars, just so that you have this on hand, it can start to allow you to kind of take a little bit of a deep breath and feel a little more calm about your particular situation. And then, sometimes I even feel like it's like a hobby, or, eventually it does become, my son and I often joke that we say all of the things that we like to do in terms of, this is when he was younger, that we would like to do to be prepared. We would joke because it was something we saw on TV where a Texan, I live in Texas, was being interviewed about the whole prepping idea. And they were like very, very much preppers way out in the country. And it was very cute because the interviewer said to the man, "Oh, this is a fun hobby." And he said, "It's not a hobby, it's a lifestyle." And so my son and I would always joke about that, and we'd look at each other when we were at the grocery store and we'd go, "It's not a hobby, it's a lifestyle." But the bottom line is that it can start as a hobby and it can be fun, and then eventually it becomes your lifestyle. It's how you live. It's how you find yourself never being caught off guard with no food and no water. So that's tip number one. I highly recommend do your inventory, look at what you've got. How much food do you have on hand? What kind of meals can you make with that? I'm going through my refrigerator now, and I wanted to start cutting these up. I've got some about a week old rosemary bread. I've got kind of a flattened Italian bread here. I have some Hatch chili. These are like little rolls. These were actually store-bought. Hatch chilies are such a big thing here in August. But my husband and I agreed they weren't particularly flavorful. So we're going to go ahead and just turn all of this into croutons. And that you can find can be really fun too, because as you're doing your inventory and as you're making sure that you have more than 1 week's worth of food, you may find things in your pantry or in your fridge or in your freezer that kind of need to be addressed pretty quickly. And you can either make a meal with them or you can turn them into something like I'm going to do, turning these into croutons. So number one, focus on food and water. They're always the most important. And once you get that into a rhythm, and you start shopping a little bit more again, and you start looking at your pantry in a little more detail, maybe you haven't really thought about this a lot since 2020 or 2021. I guarantee that as you start to organize and think about what you want to put in your pantry, and you start adding a few little things little by little, it's going to bring you peace of mind. Number two is start to, in essence, do another inventory, so to speak, and start to think about what medicines you need to have in your house so that you can have peace of mind, knowing that in the event you have minor illnesses, minor emergencies. I'm not talking about major things that we definitely would need to get to a hospital for, but things that in the event that you didn't have the ability to run out to the grocery store or to the drugstore, whatever the case may be, that you have the basics that you need in your house. Do you have your various homemade herbal preparations? A few months ago, I was up at the homesteading conference, the Modern Homesteading Conference up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Beautiful place, by the way. And one of the first things that I talked about in the first talk that I gave dealt with 10 items that are very important for stocking in your pantry. And I think the first item really surprised people because the first thing I mentioned was beeswax. Because beeswax is involved in making a lot of different home remedies, different salves, things like that. And people were like, "Oh, never thought about that." And the reason that I recommend that first is because beeswax is not easy to find. It's not like you can just hop down to your grocery store. Maybe you can, but I know I've never found it at my local grocery store. And it's not always something you can find at a local drugstore. And often it's something you have to order online, especially if you want a certain type of beeswax, if you want the little pellets and you want things that are safe for putting on skin when melted and mixed with other oils or whatever way that you use to prepare your beeswax. So when you're doing your inventory and thinking about what you need to make your home remedies, make sure that you have what you need, that you have beeswax if you like to make salves and creams. Do you have the oils that you like? Do you have the herbs that you like, whether in dried form or maybe in a fresh form in your kitchen garden, depending on what time of year it is, even in pots on your windowsills? Do you have these things in place? Plus, do you have the over-the-counter medications that you like to buy? Whatever the case may be. Some people really shy away from all of that, but other people like to have those things on hand. I definitely keep over-the-counter medications on hand in addition to my home remedies. And I like to have a mix of both. It's kind of how I've spoken to you in the past about multiple streams of food, that it's fine to have plenty of things homemade, but it's also fine to have things that you buy at the grocery store so that you have backups, so that if you don't get around to making something, you have a store-bought backup version of it. And that's how I feel about when I talk about medications. Yes, I have all my home remedies. I love making my elderberry syrup and my cough medicines and so on and so forth. But I also have store-bought counterparts. And I search out things that are more natural that I particularly like for my family. But this really varies from person to person. It's whatever you want to do. You may want to have some aspirin. You may want to have things like ibuprofen. Whatever it is, acetaminophen, if I'm saying these words correctly. I'm the queen of mispronunciation. But make sure that you have what you need, what you or your family like to use, and make sure that they are not expired. Just go through what you have and make sure you have what you need, because that'll also bring you peace of mind, so that if, say, you're hit with a bad headache, and when you have a bad headache, you like to take a cup of coffee and maybe some aspirin to give you relief, especially if, as I often refer to myself, you're the chief cook and bottle washer in the family and everybody's relying on you, and maybe it's not always an option to be able to lie down with a cold compress on your head in a dark room. Sometimes you really have to hit the ground running, especially when you have young children. And so just make sure that you have stocked what you need. And that brings us, once you talk about your herbs and once you talk about your over-the-counter medications, make sure that if you take prescription medications, you have a fairly good supply. And you can talk to your doctors about this. And I think that many have become very good about this, especially since 2020, about making sure that their patients do have the medications that they need and a fairly good supply. So talk to your doctor about that. Many doctors today are giving like 90-day prescriptions and so on and so forth. So that's another area, again, to bring you peace of mind. Your herbs, your over-the-counter medications, and your prescription medications. Now, speaking of prescription medications, something that I found extremely interesting was, this is quite a few years ago, but I was on, just as a participant, I was listening to a live video where the people could leave comments on the side. And so many people, it was all about being well prepared, and so many people were talking about the great concern they had at being able to keep their medications cold in the event of no power. And I understand that completely, because we went for about a week without power. Maybe it'd come on for like a half an hour, and then it would go off again. But if you have medication that needs to be kept cold, and this can go above and beyond needing insulin to be kept cold, because today there are a lot of medications that need to be kept cold. And so what do? The good news is we have so much to choose from. And back when I was listening to that video and the people were leaving comments, people didn't know what to do. There weren't the options that we have today. But the wonderful thing is there are coolers that you can plug in and have charged when you have power. But if you lose that charge because you have an extended period of time where you don't have power, these can be charged with solar panels. And you can have a little solar station, solar panels, and then your cooler that can run basically on power and electricity that you are generating from your solar panels. I find it all so amazing today how much we have available to us. But if you decide to go this route, I highly recommend that you do practice test runs. That if you have a little solar station, we have a Jackery, and if you have solar panels, and if you have a cooler that runs on solar power, make sure you've opened everything up. Make sure that you've practiced and that you know how to charge these things, and that you know how to charge them in your home when you have electricity, and that you know how to charge them when you don't have electricity using your solar power. And I will tell you that I really have to thank my husband, because he's terrific at making sure that we know how to use these things. And we were able to help friends of ours who wound up in another storm where we had power and they didn't have power. We were able to help them with our solar stations. But when we first got our Jackery, our very first Jackery, my husband took it out and he had the solar panels and he was setting everything up, and then he was like, wait, where's the cord? I don't have the cord. And he's looking all around, and they had packed the cord in an unusual way, somewhat of like a mesh bag that you might have just thought was packaging. But you can imagine how if you were in an emergency situation and you were feeling a little stressed by that emergency, that you may not be thinking as clearly as when you're doing a test run. And he looked through everything again, and then he was like, oh, here's the cord, you know, in this like mesh packing material. So that's just so valuable to do practice runs on these things. And even talking about cooking when you don't have electricity, and that you can make it kind of fun. You can practice cooking foods that you buy that maybe you're just going to be preparing on a little trivet with some little tea candles, which I've talked about with you in the past, and I have menu plans for you and shopping guides and instructions on how to do all of this, which I'll definitely link below. But practicing this before a situation actually presents itself can make all the difference in the world. Because if you lose power and you're without power for a couple of days or a week, you feel calm and you feel at peace. And you feel at peace before anything like this happens, because you say to yourself, oh, I've practiced how to prepare these foods under good conditions. And I've practiced with my solar station. I've practiced with my solar panels. I've practiced with my cooler that can run on solar power and keep our family medicines cold that need to be kept cold. So that's another way to really bring peace into your life. So number one, make sure you've got some backup food. Number two, make sure you have the medications on hand that you need. And under the umbrella of both 1 and 2, make sure you do some test runs so that you practice cooking without power, so that you practice how to use your solar station and your solar panels and your cooler. All of these things can be done in a joyful way and in a fun way, and can help you feel that you're doing something active, that you're taking action to help make yourself feel more at peace, lower your stress, lower your worries, lower your concerns, lower your anxiety, all of these things, and feel at peace, feel secure. And you feel, I guess this has become somewhat of an overused term, but you feel empowered. Now, before we move on to number 3, what I wanted to talk to you about is this fall, I plan to move, plan to film more baking videos. And a lot of times, what I've been doing is sourdough. But I know that some of you, have had some challenges with sourdough, and I definitely understand that. But you have to let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see more yeasted breads, because I'm happy to make those too. And I can also share with you some what I call like little tips and tricks to make kind of like a mock sourdough. Also, as I take you along this fall and we do more baking together, I also am planning to just bring you along more during the day to show you how I run my kitchen, kind of how sort of day in the life, for lack of a better word, because over the years, and you have been so patient with me, but over the years I've received a lot of comments and emails asking me, Mary, like, how do you run your kitchen? What do you do? You know, run your traditional foods kitchen. How do you keep it all humming and so on and so forth? Like behind me here, these are my kefir grains that are in some dairy. I've also got I've got some bulgur wheat and some quinoa. I'm going to soak this tonight and make this as a porridge in the morning. So these are just kind of the little different things that I do. And so I'm going to want to share with you in the future kind of my nighttime prep routine. And forgive me for putting my back to you. I live in an old house. We don't have a big open floor plan. So sometimes my cooktop is here against the wall. So sometimes it's a little odd filming when I'm not at the kitchen island. But as I said, this is very impromptu and I'm just very informal today. But if you would like me to take you along for more informal videos in the kitchen where I'm cooking and showing you my routine, I know I definitely have received comments and emails about sharing that, and I'm happy to do it. It's a little more awkward filming it, but my husband is such a good egg, but we're in a little like a little tight alleyway space here between my island and my kitchen sink that you often see behind me when we're able to put the camera on the other side of the island. But I like the idea of being able to take you along with me and showing you my actual nighttime routine, my morning routine, how I go about kind of keeping my traditional foods kitchen humming. Well, enough about that. We'll talk in more detail. I'll do another video where I talk in a little more detail about what I have planned. But definitely let me know about the yeasted breads if that's something that you're interested in, because I do bake both with sourdough and packaged yeast, the type that you buy at the grocery store. And I use different types of yeast. And I also have kind of tips and tricks that I can share with you where I use smaller amounts of packaged yeast, but still can work at getting a nice rise, because I'll often create a little mixture ahead of time that they have different names. You might hear biga, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and so on and so forth. But sometimes I'll create a little something like that, and then with packaged yeast, and then I'll add that to my bread, and then I kind of let everything ferment for a while. So you can wind up getting like really nice, tasty, light breads with a nice crust and so on and so forth. But we can have a lot of fun with that this fall. I don't do a lot of baking in the summer, only because when it's 100 degrees outside, I don't want to put the oven on. I've heard from some of you that you're not receiving notifications when my videos come out on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Central. So in case you're not receiving notifications, be sure to head over to my YouTube homepage and check that you are signed up to receive notifications. So number 3 kind of takes us a little bit out of the kitchen, so to speak. But I will tell you that this is probably one of the things, and I really have to thank my husband and son for getting me on program with all of this. But this is one of the things that I think brings me the most peace of mind, not just for myself, but knowing that my family has all of this as well. And when I say all of this, it's really not a lot of stuff, and it's not very expensive, but it can really bring you peace of mind. Now, you may laugh at how I show you this. This is in like an old Burt's Bees, I don't know if they still sell things like this, where they have the little plastic packaging, but I love this because this holds the charger for my phone. And this is such a terrific setup, and I just keep it in here, and it's on the bottom of my pocketbook. and hopefully most of the time I don't need it. But sometimes I've had, especially, in caring for my parents when they were alive and aging, or even with our son. If you've been with me a while, our son went through a lot of hospitalization, and having this charger where I could just plug this into the wall and charge my phone so that it wouldn't go dead, so that I had a lifeline, in essence, to whomever I needed to be in contact, whether it was my husband or my son when I might be caring for my parents, or my husband when the hospital might just allow one parent to go back. Having this ability to stay in touch and not have my phone lose power or go dead was just fantastic. Now, this may seem very simple to you, but if you're like me, it may not be something that you think of immediately to have in your pocketbook. You may say, oh, well, I've got this. I can just plug this into my car. But what if you're in a situation where you can't just plug this into your car? What if you're at a place where maybe all you have available to you is an electric plug? Whether it's a hospital, doctor's office, the airport. This has come in very handy at the airport, especially when we've had cancellations and delayed flights. And especially my son has to travel a lot, and knowing that he has something like this always on his person, so that he's always able to find some plug somewhere to charge his phone so he can stay in touch with us, is, to me, it's a lifeline. And especially if you're ever in a situation where there are major situations where you don't want your phone to go dead, that you want to be able to keep your phone charged and be able to stay in touch with whomever you need to stay in touch with, even family members, in a disaster situation of extremely bad weather, and you want to make plans with your family as to how you're all going to unite. And yes, phones can be very busy, I understand that completely, but knowing that you have a charged phone and not a phone that has gone dead really can be very comforting. Now, the other thing I carry in my pocketbook is, my son calls it, like a brick or something like that? I'm not quite sure what the proper terminology is, or the nickname terminology, but it's just a little, basically, charging station. I keep this in my pocketbook, and I make sure that I always keep it well charged. And if I am not able to, if my phone is running low and I'm not able to find a place to plug my phone in, and I'm not in a situation where I can charge my phone in my car, I've got this. These are fantastic. And I know maybe some of you are laughing at me and going, oh my gosh, it's so common. But how many of you keep one of these in your pocketbook? I always tell, it was funny because this was so important to me when I learned about it. And I always say to my son, do you have your power brick? Are you sure you got it? Is it in your pocket? And he laughs because he's always got his pockets bulging with different things. But he always has some type of charger like this, and then he's got some kind of power brick like this. Having these in your pocketbook, and I guess I'm speaking specifically to ladies or for men, having them in your pockets, can bring you a lot of peace of mind. You can know that you're not going to be left with a phone that's dead and that you're not able to reach, whether it's family or friends. I just turned it on. You can see it. See, I've got it 100% charged. And you know that you have your lifeline. And knowing that you have something like this in your pocketbook, your briefcase, your pants pocket, your jacket pocket, brings peace. At least for me, I feel peace, and I feel much less worry and concern knowing that everybody in my family has one of these and one of these. And now, yes, is mine small? Yes, it is. I've had this a little while. You can get bigger ones that'll charge even faster. But whatever you do, having this type of backup in your pocketbook, hopefully you never need it, But if you do, you know you've got it. And hopefully that'll help really lower your worries and concerns and any anxiety you might feel about what may be going on around you, or going on around in the country with power failures and so on and so forth. You know you still may have a way to keep your phone running. So what I'm going to do is I'll have links in the description below to some of the videos that I mentioned, some of the downloads that I have mentioned, and the downloads are all free. I mean, this is very important information, and I never want anybody to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to put an email in, it's such a rigmarole. All of the preparedness information that I share is very easy to download and no email required. And I also will put links to all of the products that I talked about and that I use personally in our home. And if you want to know, definitely leave me comments. If you want to know why we decided on the particular products we use, I'm happy to share that with you. Now, if you would like more information, really detailed information about all of this, be sure to click on this playlist over here, where I have information on stocking the pantry, being prepared with water, being prepared with equipment, all types of things like this and more. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.